And so we do see more companies kind of making a significant play or investment or putting some attention and care towards customer stories, because especially in the climate we're in, where the whole notion is do more with less, there are very few assets that are going to give you more versatility, that are going to be more evergreen, that are going to be more, applicable in multiple scenarios, from lead gen all the way through to upselling and nurturing. So I do think companies are making them more of a priority in that. At the same time, people are still, I think, running scared.
Welcome to Kindred Spirits, the podcast that brings you unfiltered conversations about life, work, and everything in between.
Join us as we share stories, spark connections, and celebrate the magic that happens when kindred spirits unite.
Welcome, everyone. And especially welcome, Joel. How are you?
Good. I'm recovering from the total deprivation of sleep we've had the past little bit with a newborn in the house, but I'm good.
Oh my gosh. So this is going to be great. I'm jet lag and you're sleep deprived. And Maddy, just to be, there's something too. Joel, let's just to kick things off, tell us, the concept of case study buddy and, what led you to it. Tell us who you are.
Sure. Yeah. So case study buddy got its start over 7 years ago. My background, I always loved to write, never saw a career in it, wound up in an agency doing SEO, which was a job I didn't know existed till it was mine. And did that for about 5 years. And in the course of doing that, kind of got introduced to, the value of content online anyways, long story short. And so in 2013, saw an opportunity to do the thing that I loved for money, which was write. So went out in my own and originally doing content, and then quickly transitioned into more of the conversion copywriting side of things, and really enjoyed that. And then it was on the back of a project that I had done there for a company called WP Engine. Someone on their board came up to me after and said, "Hey, I advise this little company called Pingboard. They need a case study. Is that something that you're able to do?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, for you. Yeah, I'll figure it out." So I took a crack at doing it, and it was in the course of doing that, realized hey, here is an asset that every B2B company on the planet needs, but they're tough to do. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of disciplines involved: interviewing, writing, organization, storytelling, and understanding how this thing will be presented, and then project management and all of it. So tough to do, lots of moving pieces, massive need, and a lot of the things that I had done for a long time, applied and were well suited there. So I thought, well, surely someone's kind of planted the flag and said, this is all we do. We do it really well. We do it at scale. And when I turned to Google, it was pretty much a wasteland. There was one woman, Casey Hibbard, who'd been around a while, kind of specializing there. A handful of freelancers that did it as one more thing they did, but no one had built a focused or scalable team. And so I thought, I'll give it a try. I'll see where it could go. So off the side of my desk, kind of 7+ years ago, it began, and brought in a partner in Jen, and started growing the team. And that's really where things kind of originated. Learned a lot along the way, and been humbled by a lot of things along the way. But we've had the chance to work with some pretty amazing companies and tell some pretty amazing stories.
Oh, I love that. And it just really stemmed down just following what you really loved to do originally, right? And that's right. And it came all around. That's awesome. I love the case study buddy, the name of it. Is there any background story on that? Just out of curiosity, or was that just kind of stumbled through?
Yeah, every business, both business casual copywriting and case study buddy were the first names that popped in my head, and I just ran with them. With case study buddy, it was almost that I had what I thought was a snappy name. I'm yeah, I could do that. I kind of got excited about the notion of it. These days, I'm a little less excited about it, because the term case study is so convoluted now, and it feels kind of clinical and cold. And it's I wish customer story buddy rolled off the tongue better, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, it was the snappy name that comes extra fuel to the fire to kind of give it a go. But yeah, it just popped in my head really. And I was well, no one's owning the domain, so I'll go for it.
Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Ask Jeeves back in the 90s, that little pen that would pop up on the side. So you got something. I just wanted to share my insight that I got excited about your name.
Thank you. Yeah.
It sounds like so much has changed from when you started this to where things are now, even just with case studies being so much more common. So, can you tell us a little bit about what the challenges were in the early days of the business and what those have changed into, what you're up against these days?
Yeah, sure. I mean, early days, you're just trying to bear out the concept and get traction, right? I was really lucky to carry like a reasonably strong personal brand into the business. Like in my work for the agency side of things, I made a lot of good connections and inroads with digital marketers and SEOs and got to know some really great people. And then when I was doing the conversion stuff, I had some great clients and stories behind me. Like I'd done work for HubSpot at that point, and I had spoken at, MozCon and different events. So I had a bit of a brand going in, but you're still trying to prove out like, can this work? Um, and what's a good price point for it? And, how will it function? And so early days was like, well, how could this look? And then once you start getting traction, that's, well, how do I manage now the success that this is having? So building a team, right? How do you hire? How do you vet? How do you find the right people? And I had tried to start a writing team prior to case study, but it was like a miserable failure. Like it didn't work out at all because I carried a lot of assumptions and biases and things into doing that. My focus was more on like, look at all the money I can make. Unless I'm like, oh, this requires like a complete shift in mindset and role and all of that. So, early days challenges for case study buddy was proving out the concept and building the early processes and then building the team and then, playing whack-a-mole with like case studies. They're a really finicky asset to do. And so playing whack-a-mole with some of the issues there, like how do you handle it when someone goes to you for an interview or goes to you halfway through the process or when a client doesn't have anyone to nominate or that kind of thing. And to some extent, there some of those problems are the same. They're just bigger and tougher now at scale. Like the challenges we face today are still surrounding things like how do you build a sustainable business around an asset that can be really sporadic for teams? How do you manage a situation where you can only do as much work as a client can get buy-in from their customers to do? How do you manage when someone has, paid you up front for 5 stories, you've been able to deliver 3, and then they go totally dark on you, or your primary point of contact churns out of the company. So these days it's model challenges and trying to figure out, how do we now continue to do this for the enterprise, for the clients we want to do it, and put in place kind of a model that, allows us to be long-term profitable, sustainable, and deliver excellent work. And at the same time, doesn't feel like punitive and difficult for clients. So, it's, you're always going to learn something. And I think that's one of the big benefits is, what used to be this side project and is now my full-time focus has come with so many lessons about myself, about managing a team, about building a business, about navigating tricky conversations and all of it.
And even sounds like
Yeah.
communication. I mean, like you doesn't matter if it's 10 years ago or today, there's always going to be communication issues and tracking customers down and getting them to actually respond. I'm sure that will never go away.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's true. And then there's just the operational challenges too, right? Like anytime you're serving B2B, there's just a ton of churn. There's a ton of volatility. There's a ton of, change. There's a lot of stakeholders. And then we have the unique pleasure working with legal and PR and navigating that stuff. So yeah, I mean, communication is always going to be part and parcel with what we do. And that's part of what makes our projects team so exceptional is their ability to communicate through things for sure.
Yeah, and you hit a heartstring there with the ghosting too. It's so easy because everyone is always pulled in so many different directions right now, especially online. There's so much going on. There's so much competition, right? And I'm curious, so you kind of touch base on, and Maddie, you said too, like the trends from 10 years to now, communication is really big, but you're writing and you're seeing trends. Given your position in the industry, what was one unique trend that came up recently that you were so surprised that either came back or you never thought it would even show up in the world that you work in?
Yeah. I mean, there've been a lot of trends that have just exploded, right? I think one of them underpinning everything is the growth in like customer marketing as a role. Like when we started Case Study Buddy, I didn't know customer marketing as a discipline existed.
Yeah.
Now it's a huge contingent of like who we interact with, and the amount of time and energy and money companies are pouring into that role has grown. Another one, when we started, we kind of started as a written first company. That was my background. So, we knew the written side of things, and we knew video testimonials largely at that time was like, yeah, you take a camera crew on site, you film and that kind of thing. Well, the pandemic comes along, and there's a massive just explosion in remote video that I think caught every company in our space by surprise. Suddenly now everyone is, scrambling to figure out how can we capture high quality, video totally remote? How can we, control these uncontrolled environments and produce something worth watching from somebody's living room or what have you, right? And we take it for granted now, but tools like Riverside or Squadcast, like they didn't exist. There really was not a whole lot there for capturing anything other than ultra compressed Zoom videos, from abroad. And then everything kind of ebbs and flows. Everyone wants to argue video is best or short is best or long is best or what have you. But the new trend now is really just looking at unique formats, right? Everybody has kind of gotten sick to death of this problem solution results kind of rigid format and is looking for some more creative storytelling approach. And yet, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Those rigid, kind of formats are still contributing to millions in new revenue. They're still influencing decisions and so on. So there have been a lot of trends and changes over time. And I think the explosion of customer marketing, multimedia, remote video, all of that has helped to shape, the landscape of how things look today.
Hmm. You mentioned the contribution that these make towards the revenue for these companies. For anyone that's not using case studies currently, are you able to share any stats or anything about how these case studies really affect business and revenue?
Yeah, I mean, I can point to our own case studies with, our own clients. We've had clients who have closed, our agency clients that have started using these in the sales funnel and started to close, $200,000 worth of new work in a month. That, we can't lay all of the credit to the case study. They're still generating leads and all that, but they've accelerated time to sale and that sort of thing. We have seen clients where their positive response rates when using case studies in cold outreach, for example, have doubled or tripled. They're getting more inroads there. We had a client, Carthook, that was deploying these stories in remarketing and putting them kind of head to head against more traditional kind of landing pages, sales pages. And the case studies were winning. They were driving more inquiries, more qualified business. One of our big kind of flagship stories is HubSpot. We've done at this point over 150 stories for them the course of years, but there was a time where they kind of took a look at like 8 to 12 of the stories we completed, and they looked at how many conversion paths were these part of, how much net new monthly recurring revenue did it contribute to, and just a handful of the stories we've done contributed to something like 2 million in new annual recurring revenue. So it's kind of one of those things where your ROI, the metric that's going to make sense, is going to depend where and how you're deploying the thing. Are you using it in ads? Are you using it in cold outreach? Are you sharing it on the site? How frequently and all of that. But I think beyond that, just anecdotally in saturated spaces, or when you're a newcomer to a space, or when you're the incumbent or what have you, the more stories you have, the more people you have vetting for you, the more proof you can point to, the easier the time you're going to have generating leads, closing those leads, upselling those leads, and so on. And to be able to do that with an asset that doesn't rely on you making claims or you promising the world, but your customers advocating for you, is a really powerful thing.
Obviously, it's hugely impactful. Do you happen to know what the psychology is behind all of this? Why these case studies work so well?
I think it has to do with the fact that we're increasingly skeptical of claims that companies make. And so I think there are a few different kind of psychological things at play here. I think number one, people want psychological safety in their decision making. They want to know someone like them has made this decision before and not gotten fired for it, or gotten the result that they're looking to achieve. And case studies tell stories of exactly that. well told, they're specific. They're ultra specific. It's someone in this type of role, in this type of space, made this type of decision and got this type of result. And that's what resonates about stories is their specificity and, their believability, because you've now got this third party going on the record and advocating for, the choice that they made and saying, hey, folks, like, yeah, it'll work out for you too. I think there's also, once you get into the realm of having a whole lot of stories, then you're getting into safety in the herd and kind of proof in numbers. We want to be part of the in crowd. And so for some of the stories we tell, they're more aspirational in tone than anything. You look at some of for example, the campaign HubSpot is running for their startup stories. And those stories are as much about telling a story of someone that entrepreneurs want to be like, as they are wanting to mimic the decisions they've made or get the outcomes they've achieved. They do a fantastic job of representing underrepresented communities. They do a fantastic job of choosing people that are, visibly successful and have really compelling stories and trajectories and journeys, because, someone reading that who's earlier stage is going to look at that and go, I want to be like that. I want to achieve that too. So I think there's a lot of psychological kind of elements in play, but it really is about, who can I trust? Who can I believe? Who's been there before? Is there safety in this decision? And will I, achieve what I want to achieve? And because it's not a company advocating for that, it's a lot easier to stomach.
Absolutely. I was going to say, like, after COVID, everyone just got, people are scared. I'm just going to say it. People are nervous, right? There's so much spam coming out. And, I love what you just said, like, having an honorable company to represent you and knowing that it's not just everyone writing Glassdoor reviews at work there or making videos from the inside of the company, but someone trusting that they're making the right decision for sure. Um, I always like to ask this question is, what kind of clients do you usually go for? Do you have all sorts of clients? Like, where do you, when you're doing your B2B for Case Study Buddy, like, how do you vet for someone that you want to work with?
Yeah, I think it's been just a learning and it's been hard, right? Early days, it really was, hey, call comers. And if you can afford us, we can work together. We've raised prices over time and that's helped us kind of move more firmly into the mid-market to enterprise. And then these days, we're really looking to the future as we're really built, we're built for enterprise. It costs us money to work with smaller companies and companies who can't do the scale and companies who, don't really have the focused ability to kind of action stories or move them along or get nominations. And so these days, we're firmly kind of aimed towards kind of the upper mid-size to enterprise. We can't at this point capably, really serve the individual life coach or the boutique consultant necessarily as well as maybe in the earlier days when everybody was all contractors. And, we've got fixed staff. We've got an incredible team. We've got the ability to do scale and be really hands-on. And the fit for that now is that mid-size to enterprise market. So it's tough because a few times over the course of the company, we've had to kind of say goodbye to a contingent of clients that we liked working with, we were driving revenue from because it was just no longer a fit for where we wanted to go.
Mm-hmm. And that's a lot. It's as much as you see like a relationship building, but you got to protect your team too, right? If they're not responding, if they're running around, right? What's valuable for your team as well, which is hard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's so exciting though, getting to work with these huge players in the industry, especially HubSpot, which it sounds like has been a great client for you. And I've actually, I've heard so much about how HubSpot uses content marketing. They pour tons of money into all their content and really see a return from that. Would you say that you see the the marketing industry going that direction with case studies kind of fitting into that realm of content marketing?
I think it's interesting. I think that's one of the quirky things about customer stories is even these big companies, your multi-billion dollar cap companies, they still struggle a lot of the time with, we ask every company, do you have SOPs for this? Do you have roles and accountability? Do you have, templates for these things? How are you connecting with the CSMs and sales teams? Because that's kind of the like unique, wonderful, tricky thing about case studies is they don't just squarely fit into content marketing. There's a big component of them that is sales enablement. There's a big component of them that is, demand gen or cold outreach. Like there's so much overlap. So they are content and they are part of marketing, but who owns the function or who contributes to the function? Like that can be customer marketing, that can be product marketing, that can be content marketing. And then inevitably they're dependent on sales, CSMs, leadership. Like case studies are really a team sport. And so we do see more companies kind of making a significant play or investment or putting some attention and care towards customer stories, because especially in the climate we're in, where the whole notion is do more with less, there are very few assets that are going to give you more versatility, that are going to be more evergreen, that are going to be more, applicable in multiple scenarios from, lead gen all the way through to upselling and nurturing. So I do think companies are making them more of a priority in that. At the same time, people are still, I think, running scared. A lot of people's budgets are tied up. A lot of people don't know what they have to work with. A lot of companies are in churn and having leaders, come and go and all of that. So I think there's certainly a trend towards doing more of this and in more formats and in more ways. But how that looks is spread across teams. If that makes sense.
Oh yes, I that makes complete sense. It's like an engine, right? Everyone leans on each other to keep making sure that project is moving, right? And it's so true, and especially when you mentioned before, like customer marketing, leading on the product marketing, and then that's leading on the customer success manager who's doing like they behind the scenes has so much going on, right?
And it sounds like this asset really does help out in every different area of the business, which makes it so unique and special. So really cool to learn about that.
So a couple more questions, and I always ask this question. It's a pretty standard podcast question, but we bring a lot of entrepreneurs on here starting out, and just a lot of people wanting to either to make a shift. And I know you mentioned a lot that you've learned so much, which I think everyone does, right? But if you could go back and just talk to yourself right when you started, like honest truth, to keep it raw, like what advice would you offer to yourself, or what would you say, don't do that, if you kind of were thinking big picture stuff, if you could go back in time?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I answer this question almost the same every time, because these are the big lessons that really stand out to me. And I think one is to ask for help. I think early on, there's a tendency to want to lone wolf it and look like you've got it all put together. And that only takes you so far. I think I wish I would have been better at asking for help earlier on and listening and weighing the insights of others, rather than kind of seeing, merit and valor in like trying to do it alone. So I think that's one thing. I think, so I'm just in life in general, I'm trying to do more of now. And this like, I'd go in back before case study started, but just cultivating curiosity, be constantly asking, what if I'm wrong? Or why does that work? Or why do they think that? Or why are they asking for this, rather than be defensive or entrenched about it? Curiosity is a superpower, I think. And then I beyond that, I think you just have to, it's the cliche, but I think you do have to realize entrepreneurship at any scale is really getting in the ring and getting punched in the face 1,000 times and then coming back the next day to do it again. Like it's always going to be hard. There are always going to be things that are difficult. That, everyone who's out there touting their numbers and waving the flag and looking like they're just cruising along, like everybody's getting punched in the face somewhere, and this stuff is not easy. And it's okay that it's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. Like if you go into this expecting that you're just going to solve these problems and they're all going to disappear, and then you'll just cruise on to, a happy, peaceful, calm, conflict-free future, it's probably not going to be the case. Like business is hard. It sounds stupid, but business is hard. And if you're not prepared for that, there is nothing wrong with being in-house or taking a different type of role, because it's still going to be hard there. You're still going to face challenges and conflict there. But I'd say the stress of like building your own thing is just that much more, because the stakes are often that much higher. So yeah, I don't know. Those are three things I'd probably tell myself.
And I love that because it's so true. Sometimes you think that as entrepreneur, I saw this meme that was like entrepreneurs, it's like a really messy graphs. You're like, you got it for one day, you're down for 15. You got it for one day, but on the social media aspect of it, everything, they're like smiling, skipping along the road, right? So love that. We have a couple more minutes left. Honestly, Joel, it's been such an interesting conversation for us. Maddy, do you want to finish us off?
Yeah, absolutely. This has been so fantastic and insightful, Joel. So thank you. Our final question, which we love to ask everybody. This podcast, as you know, it's called Kindred Spirits. And that name was inspired by our favorite quote, which says, "To discover a kindred spirit is to find your heart in the heart of a friend." So what we wanted to ask you, Joel, is how do you know when you've found a kindred spirit in your life?
That's a good question. I think so much of a friendship or relationship or anything kind of operates in like what isn't said or no longer needs to be. Like in the beginning with a new relationship, you talk a lot, whether it's a friendship or whatever. And often that continues. I mean, whether it's in business or elsewhere, you continue to talk a lot, but there's just kind of, it's hard to put a finger, but there's just this like kind of quiet understanding and ability to see and be seen in the other person, where there's certain things you just no longer have to explain or justify or argue for, because you can kind of assume a baseline of like, we're aligned, we get it. So that's like maybe a convoluted answer for that. But that's kind of to try to put it to words, I guess.
Yeah, no, I get that. The feeling of alignment and understanding that grows from knowing someone so well for a while. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Well, Joel, we really appreciate you coming on. I know you're sleep deprived, but you've been so insightful. And I know a lot of our listeners will appreciate this because it's just, I love it.
Yeah, thanks so much
Absolutely.
for the chance to share.
And can we share where people can find you if they would like to connect with you after this?
Yeah, definitely. So for me personally, LinkedIn is a great place to be. I don't always respond quickly, but I do always respond. So feel free to shoot a message and connect there. I'm also relatively active on Twitter, or I guess X or whatever. But not, I take myself a whole lot less seriously there. So like, I think yesterday I was posting like various historical, execution of Muppet pictures of things like Muppets tied to train tracks and stuff like that, just because I'm amazed at the stupid things you can come up with AI. But you can connect there and see what kind of stupid things I'm working on. And then if you're trying to get into the guts of like customer stories, or you want to, get your hands dirty and try some things, Case Study Buddy's blog and newsletter, there's a ton of stuff there it's not sales pitchy. It's just, here's how to do this. Here's how to come at this. Here's how to look at this. So whether you're just getting started, whether you've got a team, whether you, find yourself in an enterprise org, whatever it might be, there's a ton there that you can kind of pick up and run with.
Awesome. Now I got to go to your Twitter page or whatever. I see Muppets tied to trains. Just let everyone know. Okay. Well, everyone have a great rest of your day. Joel, again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye, everyone.